Welcome to Done with Debauchery, a sobriety and wellness podcast where you'll hear honest experiences about navigating life and relationships without alcohol, how to pursue your own personal wellness journey, and share intimate conversations with special guests. I'm your host, Keisha Scott. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Done with Debauchery. I'm your host, Keisha Scott. I want to start off by saying thank you to everyone who listened to my first solo episode. Anyone who listened, liked, shared, it really means a lot to me, so thank you so much. On this week's episode, I'm joined by a lovely guest. But before we get to that, I want to let you know about an interview I actually got to do. If you don't follow me on Instagram, you may not have seen that I was a guest on a Sober Girls Guide podcast last week. Anyone in the sober community knows how big of a deal that is. I got to chat and have a really personal conversation with Jessica. I opened up about my life growing up, how some events impacted my relationship with drugs and alcohol from a young age, and so much more. It's a great episode. I'd love for you to listen to it. So you can head over to a Sober Girls Guide podcast. She's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and give it a listen. My guest on the show this week is Sarah Kate from Some Good Clean Fun. Sarah has been rethinking her drinking for over 2 years and now runs a lifestyle platform for women who are interested in living an alcohol-free lifestyle or maybe rethinking their drinking. I can't wait for you to hear our conversation, so let's jump right in. Hi, Sarah Kate. How are you?
Hello, I'm great. Thank you so much for having me on today.
I am so excited that we're doing this. We were just chatting for a few minutes before hitting record, and I feel like there is just such a good energy that I was like, we got to just start this now and
Yeah,
get it
totally.
on.
Totally. I'm so excited to talk to you today too, and thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. So maybe we can start with just learning a little bit about you. Who are you? What's your relationship with alcohol? And if you could tell us about Some Good Clean Fun.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Okay, so um I'm Sarah Kate and I am a Torontonian, mom of two, lifetime sort of health conscious person. I used to work in marketing and PR for a really long time. And I I made a shift in my life when I decided to give up alcohol, and I know this is a very short answer to a long question, but I'm trying to keep this short. But basically, I've spent the last 2 years rethinking drinking. So I've created this platform, somegoodcleanfun.com, which is a lifestyle, a non-alcoholic or alcohol-free lifestyle website that does alcohol-free drinks and some lifestyle content around living an alcohol-free lifestyle. Around this platform, I have the idea of rethinking drinking, and it's the approach that I've spent the last 2 years working on this, but it's this idea that it's not just that we have to rethink drinking on a personal level, but on a societal level as well. So it might not be all obvious in my content that's where I'm going with this, but really I think that from a societal level, there's a lot of people out there right now who are sober curious, rethinking drinking, and it's really exciting. But nothing is going to change in our society unless we look at it from a societal level as well. So where are these influences coming from, and how can we question those things a little bit closer so that we can make the best decisions for ourselves, because we haven't been fully armed with all the information. And so that's what I'm
Yeah.
trying to do. I'm trying to arm people with both the information to critically assess the role of alcohol in their lives, but also give them something else to drink. You can
Yes.
have your cake, and you can have your cake and eat it too.
Yes, and I love what you said about it really being like a bigger issue and something that is happening on a societal level because we don't really have all the information. Like for so long, it didn't even cross my mind that not drinking alcohol was just the solution. Like that there's so many other options out there for us. Like, and you truly are the alcohol-free drink expert. Like that's how we connected as well on Instagram. I have purchased some non-alcoholic wine and cocktails from you, which have all been exceptional. And yeah, you really also like opened my eyes to this whole other kind of like network out there of options.
Yeah, and I think that's what the key is, like that when somebody's making the decision to, and this is a sort of a deeper topic we can get into after, but when somebody's making the decision to, they want to reduce their drinking, they want to moderate, or they want to quit or whatever, there's a lot of like mental work that has to be done, obviously.
Hmm.
But the two things that I think that, AA and some of these other programs don't deal with is they don't teach people how to look critically at the influence of alcohol in their lives. So that's number one. But then number two, we're trying to stop a habit. So when you are stopping smoking, a lot of people switch to vape,
Yeah.
because and a lot of people don't like the patches and the gums because it doesn't replace the feeling of having something in between their fingers. That's part of the equation of quitting smoking, is that you've had something between your fingers, smoking for however long you smoke. With drinking, it's the same thing. You want to have something in your hand. You're not just trying to work on mentally, like, do I need this substance? You're also having to change a physical habit of holding a drink in your hand. And it's really disappointing when you've got, a glass of orange juice and everybody else is drinking sparkling wine, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever. You're at brunch and you can't have the mimosa, you just have to have orange juice. So I think that that's a huge part of the equation, is that, non-alcoholic drinks are getting better and better. And it's opening that world up to people, and helping them understand that if you drink a glass of wine every night and there's one night a week you don't want to, but you don't want to miss out on having something, there's an option for you. And that's one step toward you drinking less. In my mind, it's one step.
Yeah.
Helping that person say, you know what, tonight I'm going to have a glass of great non-alcoholic wine or a non-alcoholic cocktail instead of my regular glass of wine. And that's one step. Um, the way that I position it is that it's one step further away from breast cancer, one step further away from, the effects of drinking. When you have that one less glass of wine a week, it's like, it's a
Yeah.
baby step, but it's going in the right direction. So helping people understand that you can be a drinker and have a non-alcoholic drink. It doesn't mean that you're an alcoholic.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love that. And I think that for me, when I was drinking, a lot of it was that ritual, like getting home from work, it being a certain time, me wanting to unwind and only having or only feeling that I had wine as an option. And now it's like I might still have those feelings that I want to let loose and relax at the end of the day. But now I have two different non-alcoholic wine options. I have three different canned mocktails, all are delicious. So I'm not going to the sink and pouring myself a glass of tap water and trying to make it into a full experience. Like we have these delicious options.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you make a really good point, actually. And this is something that, um, I try and get people more cognizant about when I'm talking to them, is that you you go home at 5 o'clock and you want to unwind, and you've been taught your whole life that, women need their wine and it's our time to unwind at 5 o'clock, right? And
Yeah.
whether you're a young professional coming home from the office, or you're a mom coming home from work and having to make dinner and grabbing a glass of wine while you're cooking, we've
Yeah.
been trained for the last, 20 years, since Sex in the City, really. I think, I'm historically, I know that I'm older than you. I'm just going to say, I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but like, historically, like, I was sort of, I can kind of look back and think about when this started, and it really, like, Sex in the City was one of the things that was like glamorized drinking and being sexy in the city, and
Yeah. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
and so you've been trained to come home every day and have a glass of, not every day, but to come home after a hard day and have a glass of wine. And unfortunately, what we don't, we're not armed with the information that you might be relaxed for 15 minutes, but then your body actually wants to maintain homeostasis, and it floods your brain with
Mm.
chemicals that reduce that good feeling of dopamine and make you feel
Yeah.
like garbage. So it's
Yeah,
like,
all the things that you're trying to escape by having that glass of wine, the anxiety, the stress, that comes back full throttle immediately after. And for me, that was a big factor in cutting alcohol out, was because I had such a mental hangover the next day that I couldn't stand to be with myself.
oh yeah, that's the worst. Like, and you know, for me, it was gradual. It was like when I was in my 20s, yeah, there were moments where I was like, oh my God, I am so disgusting. I can't believe I drank for 14 hours straight. Like,
Yeah.
ew. But then you have kids and it's like it slowly creeps up on you. You're like, you're having a glass of wine or two in the evening and you're not sure if you hate yourself or not the next morning. You just are not, you're just out of sorts. And then
Yeah.
it slowly creeps up on you and you realize that you're not, you can't live with yourself. Like you don't like yourself anymore. And that like you can't stand being with yourself because it's like, what are you doing to yourself? What are
Oh,
you doing to yourself? So it wasn't really that self-loathing that you're talking about.
yeah.
It slowly creeped up on me in my 30s and 40s. Because in my 20s, I was like, yes, like everybody drinks, let's do it.
Yeah, that's how
And
I was in my 20s too, working in the service industry, nightclubs. It was always just a part of my lifestyle. And now I'm in my early 30s now. And it wasn't until my late 20s that I really started having these feelings about like, this doesn't feel right, like something is wrong. And it's only in the last 2 years that I've really been able to step back and really look at what was the constant in all of those experiences. But it so do you feel that when you became a mom, you felt the pressures of like that mommy wine culture, mommy juice? Was that something that you experienced?
so that's interesting because I've talked to a lot of women who weren't heavy drinkers until they were moms. But
Hmm.
I am one of those people that loved alcohol from the minute I tasted it. And like from when I was, well, maybe not, but like, you know, I'm thinking back in high school. I didn't when I grew up in a small town in Ontario. Everybody drank Molson Canadian. So I didn't love Molson Canadian. When I really started loving alcohol was when I tasted wine in university.
Okay.
And that was my thing. And so I always tell people this story. There was a raver, this woman that was this like amazing like raver that lived next to me in the dorm next to me. And one day it was like great first year university. One night we were going out to pub night and she had a bottle of Pia d'Or, this like cheap white wine, and she poured the entire bottle in like a juice tumbler and drank it with a straw. And I thought it was the most cool, glamorous thing
Oh
I'd ever
no.
seen in my whole life.
Oh no.
And that there was no looking back for me. So that memory is like that's a core memory for me. I'm like it's indelible in my mind. And that is the moment where I was like, I really love wine. It's sexy, it's glamorous.
Yeah.
I'm never gonna look like Alex because she's so cool, but like and I'm never gonna have her life, but like I can drink wine with a straw out of a
Mhm.
glass and like it's cool. And I always loved wine. I always loved drinking. And like, I was that one that was like St. Patrick's Day, it's just not an excuse. I loved St. Patrick's Day because I could get as blottoed as I wanted. And it was just like
Yeah.
everybody else was too.
Yeah.
Nobody knew that like on other days, I was secretly, not secretly, but on other days, I secretly wanted to drink more
Get to that
or
level.
was
Yeah.
drinking more. Yeah. And then, so then I had kids and it actually, I, it wasn't, I didn't feel with my first daughter, I didn't like, or sorry, my first kid with my daughter. I didn't feel the urge to drink as much. Like it was, I went the 9 months in pregnancy without drinking. And then the first couple of years of her life, I don't remember feeling like I wanted to go out and drink. And I had a drink here and there. And it wasn't there. I wasn't into the mommy wine culture at that point. There was even the crowd that I hung around with, we didn't have wine at play dates. It wasn't until my second came around that when I was nursing him, I remember he was born in the winter and it was around Christmas time and somebody had given us a bottle of like chocolate flavored vodka. And I remember like pulling it out of the freezer and having just pouring some into a glass because I'm like, I just want to have a drink because I was so
Mhm.
stressed out from like the kid, but the baby and baby crying and my 2.5 and my 3.5 year old getting her to daycare, my husband, my dog, like and I clearly remember, like, if there was no wine in the house, I was just taking nips here and there throughout the day of like, not the whole day, but at the evening of like,
Sure.
of
Yeah.
this chocolate covered vodka, like from the freezer.
Yeah.
And then that's when like the mommy group I started hanging around with, it was like a new group of moms and they were drinking wine at play dates. So that kind of like, that's when I really like around when my second was born, when I really started to like lean on wine as the thing I did every day. I'd always loved drinking wine, but then it became just part of my DNA. And
Mhm.
then when your kids start saying things like, "Oh, what does mommy want for Christmas? More wine." Right? And you don't it's cringe. Now that I look back at that, I'm like, "Oh my God,
Yeah.
so cringy." Like so
Yeah.
cringy. But you don't see it at the time, like you don't see it in the moment. You just laugh. But deep down inside, it's uncomfortable. This is the thing. This is the thing. And if I could if somebody's listening to this right now and they're questioning like, their relationship with alcohol, deep down in your gut. And so even though you're laughing on the surface at these things, there is somewhere deep inside of you where it feels uncomfortable and something is wrong and something is off.
Yeah.
And I just encourage people to like trust their gut instinct more. And then don't be afraid to like take that next step, and you don't have to go to AA. It doesn't mean
Yeah.
you're an alcoholic. It just arm yourself with the information when you're making choices. That's all I ask.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that that is such an important point. It's like you don't have to decide today that you're never drinking alcohol again, but follow that intuition. Take a break for a few days, for a week, see how you feel. Like that's something that I believe in so strongly, is that there's not one linear path to getting sober. AA, I think, is excellent for some people. I did try a couple meetings and it wasn't a fit for me for whatever reason. It also was during the pandemic. It was virtual. Maybe I would have had a different experience in person, but it just
Mm-hmm.
wasn't a fit.
Yeah,
Did you go? Can I ask if you went to AA or if you did the 12 step?
never did it. Ever. I okay. So here, this is actually a good question because I like to share this. I have a bit of a not an interesting way that I stopped drinking, but I knew I'm like I have to stop, and I had tried to half-heartedly tried to kind of like cut back. And I was talking to somebody yesterday about this, and it's like we have this funny idea of what like healthy drinking levels are, and it's like, well, I didn't get drunk, so I'm fine. Like
Mm.
I'm moderating because I didn't get drunk. And so that was kind of my thing. I was like, okay, well, I'm just gonna have one glass of wine. And then I could never just have one. And I finally realized like this is serious. And I started getting really scared, like deep down in my heart and in my gut and my soul. I was scared shitless. I was like, this is not me. I have an addiction. Like all of a sudden I'm like, oh my, see, I'm starting to get teary because I'm
I'm
like,
like getting
just,
emotional listening to you because I can relate to those feelings.
yeah, where you wake up and you're just like, oh my God, I'm so fucking scared. Like, this is not me. This is not me. And this is not,
Mm.
I don't want to be that person that has an addiction. Like, so I downloaded this is such a funny story because people who have had drinking problems, they will laugh. I downloaded this app called Drinks Tracker
Okay.
as if I needed an app to track my drinks.
Yeah.
Like you don't, in your head how much you
Yeah.
drink. Too
It's kind of like
much.
if you're Googling, am I an alcoholic? Like there's a problem with the
There's a
alcohol
problem
there.
and you shouldn't have a drinks tracker.
Yeah.
Like that's not going to help you. It's
Yeah.
right. Like, so because moderation doesn't work. And that's in a whole other story, but some people think moderation can work, but it really doesn't when you have a problem. It really
And
doesn't.
that's
So
what I say too. I'm like, if you are able to like go out consciously, have a glass or two of wine and go home, you're not moderating. You just have a reasonable relationship with
relationship.
alcohol. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. And I think like, excuse me, I couldn't do that. So I downloaded this app, a drinks tracker, and what it does is it connects you in a chat with other people who have downloaded the app. And usually I feel
Oh.
that those kinds of things before I quit drinking, I would have looked at something like that as a bit weird. Like, oh, I don't want to talk to strangers on an app. Like,
Yeah.
what? But now on the flip side, and I'll get back to my story in a second, but on the flip side, I've realized how important community and connection is, right? And so now I understand why they do that because we're in this chat and there's some women and men in that group that had really serious issues. And, they chatted, I was at work and I'm a nurse and I saw the liquor store across the street out my office window and I went and I grabbed like shooters to have on
Mm.
my break. And I'm like, you're
Scary. Yeah.
scary, right? So I'm not saying my problem wasn't just like it's just a different frame of reference of what
Yeah.
everybody's problem is. So in that chat one day, somebody said one of the guys was like, "Hey, just chiming in here. Haven't talked to the group for a while, but I've 30 days without alcohol." And we were all like, "What? How did you do that?" And he's like, "Oh, I read this book called This Naked Mind."
Mm.
I'm like, "What's that?" I immediately, literally went and downloaded it and started reading it. And so the thing that I loved about This Naked Mind is right the first
That's
sentence
Annie
is like,
Grace.
yeah, Annie Grace, This
Yeah.
Naked Mind. She says the very first sentence is like, you don't have to stop drinking to read this book. I'm not telling you to stop drinking right now, but by the time you're finished this book, you're not going to want to drink again. And honestly, that is absolutely correct. Like, that is exactly what happened. So, as I was reading her book, and she says, like, try not to be drunk when you're reading, try and take in the information. And that was fine. Like, every once in a while, I'd have a glass of wine and I'd read this book. And like, I knew in my mind I had to moderate. And I had decided in the middle of March or the first week of March 2020, I had decided that April 6th was going to be the day I was starting her 30-day alcohol free challenge. She called what did she call it? I forget. She alcohol free
Yeah, I can't remember either. It's been a
something.
long time.
But like it was like there's an app and everything now, but long story short, I went on the online portal every day during the pandemic, during the beginning days of the pandemic, and I logged my emotions. I answered all the questions. And I think I went, probably a couple, like 3 weeks or so. And then a girlfriend, I was on her porch and she's like, do you want to have some wine? I'm like, just a little bit. I'll just have a half a glass. And so I had half a glass, but then I felt like I had disappointed myself. I was so mad at myself that I went most of the rest of the month of that 30 days without having anything. And then kind of slipped back into some bad habits again. Nothing serious though. Like in my mind, I was quitting drinking. I had decided. And
Yeah.
it took me quite a while. So after it took me until Christmas to really finally be like, yeah, I don't like this anymore. So I call that rethinking drinking. And this is the foundation of my platform is that just because you have a drink in this time period when you're like, I want to quit, I don't want to drink anymore, you are not a failure.
Mhm.
You are rethinking drinking. And all I'm asking is, you know, actually here, let me just go back here for a second. There's these two beautiful women from out in the East Coast in Canada, and they run this program called Your Way Weight Loss, and they are all about like calorie reduction and awareness. And you're not going to lose weight overnight. You're not going to lose weight in a month. It's going to take you a long time. It's a journey. It's going to take you a long time, but you have to be armed with the information about calorie deficit, and you have to be aware of what you're putting in your mouth and move your body. And it's such a basic concept. It's like such an easy, but that I realized as I've been following them and listening to them, that's exactly what rethinking drinking is as well. It's like it is a long, it could be a long road. But all I ask is for people to be aware and be armed with the information to make the choices. Is this healthy for you? Is it something you want? Are you making this choice because you have a narrative in your mind that this is what people do? Do you think that's the only option? Like, so that's sort of how my rethinking drinking journey went. It was like I was rethinking every day. What is the influence of society on this moment? Like I'm at an anniversary dinner and I had a glass of wine and I had another one. And then the next morning I'm like, I assessed. I wasn't mad at myself, but I was like, okay, what were the influences there? I was at a restaurant.
Mhm.
It was an anniversary. I wanted to celebrate. And so instead of being like, hey, everybody, it's day one again. No offense to anybody who does that, but I feel
Sure.
like I felt this internal voice of like, don't keep saying it's day one. You already had your day one. Your day one was April 6th. And so when people ask me, how many days have you been sober? I'm like, well, I've been alcohol free. I've been living an alcohol free lifestyle since April 6th, but there have been times when there was an 8 month window of rethinking drinking
Yeah.
in there.
Yeah. And it is such a process. And like getting to the point in your life where you do need to rethink your drinking and rethink your relationship with alcohol, getting there didn't happen overnight. So it can be like unrealistic to expect that huge change. Just one day you decide you're not never going to drink again, and then you don't. And some people that does happen, and that's incredible. And congratulations to them. But like for me also, that was not my experience. I started with a dry January, cut out alcohol for the month of January. By the end, I was feeling, wow, I'm actually like feeling good. All of these sort of mental health issues, my anxiety, all these things I was struggling with feel a little
Mhm.
lighter. So I went
Yeah.
into I did 3 months. Then I came back to Toronto. I had been in Winnipeg visiting family during the pandemic as well. I came back to Toronto and now we're creeping into summer. So then I went back to drinking for the summer. And again, it's like that societal influence. I'm going to cottages, I'm going to restaurants, I want to sit on a patio with my friends.
Yeah.
And it was kind of that
Are
stop and
you,
start.
yeah. And it's funny. A lot of people have said, well, I want to go to a patio. I want to sit on a patio with my friends. And a friend of mine actually texted me. She said, I haven't seen her for a long time, and so she was just sharing some of her like she's struggling with fertility, and so she's not only trying not to drink around the
Mm.
windows of time where she wants to get pregnant, but she's also, she says, your content is helping me check myself. Do I need to have a drink when I'm grabbing a bite on a patio with a friend, or do I want to be with the friend?
Yeah.
Like, is it, what is it that's caught? And so I've said this a few times in other things, another podcast, another like writing I've done, is that like we have forgotten how to connect with each other without alcohol. And we have forgotten what a joy it is to talk to people, to talk to each other over a bite to eat
Yeah.
without dulling our senses and dulling the experience, right? So yeah, totally. That's the cultural pressure that you had. You totally face that. Actually, I made a note. You and your what was your co-host's name?
Her
Or
name
what's your
is
co-host name?
Denise. Denise.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Denise. So she said that she said something really interesting in your moderation one, failed moderation. She
Yeah.
said like you have just have to be careful about surrounding yourself with people that put you in those dangerous situations. And I was like, I thought that's a really great point, because it's like that's such an important part of moderation, is like of balancing that, of knowing when you can put up that boundary, knowing that it's going to be a night of debauchery,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And like maybe you don't go to that thing one time because you know that that's going to be putting you in a dangerous situation, and
Yeah.
moderating doesn't work, right? So it's like those are unfortunately, I'm sorry, I'm just going to be totally frank about this. Unfortunately, this is one of the things that falls away when you do stop drinking, is you are going to lose some friends in your life, and
Yeah.
you aren't going to be included in some things anymore, and that's the reality. You have to choose. You want to keep going down that path with those people and going to those events? Is that bringing you joy, or can you replace, or like, do you want to swap it out with like, I'm not saying all your friends are going to fall by the wayside, but there are going to be people and experiences you're not going to go to because of that. And uh the reward is like, you have to swap it. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
there are going to be some trade-offs. You can't have it all. And I'm sorry if this is hurting people's feelings out there who are hoping to hang on to all their drunk friends, but it's hard to be part of that. And it's not them necessarily too. It's you grow out of it. You grow out of that experience, right?
Yeah, relationships are bound to change, and not everyone is going to come with you. And that can be a really hard pill to swallow, especially with relationships that you've had for years. That now, when you're finding yourself essentially in sobriety, you're peeling back all these layers and you're realizing, okay, maybe I don't actually have anything in common with these people besides our shared desire to get drunk and to get fucked up or
Yeah.
have these drinks.
Yeah.
And it can feel really isolating, especially at the beginning. For me, there
Yeah.
was a period of time where I really did pull back from even my friends who were supportive of my sobriety, because I didn't feel like I trusted myself to go into these social situations and even just say no to the waiter when they come by and say, "Can I get anybody a drink?" Like, yes, please. Like, I want a glass of rosé. So it can be, again, like really isolating.
And now you're going to pull
You
out a bottle of Smoky Bay Rosé and you're going to say, I brought my own, thanks.
with my own straw.
Oh, they actually have. Oh my God, just sidebar, everybody. Odd Bird, which is a really, really great brand of non-alcoholic sparkling wine, like what some the best, to me, the best in the world. They now have small little piccolo bottles. So,
Oh,
you
perfect.
can walk around with one of those with a straw. Absolutely.
Perfect for those summer park hangs if you're going. Yeah, I mean, I would totally bring that to a patio on my own.
100%. 100%. Like, and you probably don't even have to pay a corkage fee for a small bottle
Yeah,
like that.
yeah. They'll just every time I'm sure they'll be walking by wondering like, what are they
Yeah,
having?
yeah. You're included. Then this way you feel included, right? But
Yeah,
yeah, it's that's the thing. And I'm sorry that you pulled back, and hopefully, like, things have, you've kind of found your footing again. But I think that does
yeah,
happen. I think that happens. I was lucky because it happened during the pandemic. Sorry, I went through the pandemic without drinking, and I came out the other side of the pandemic, and I'm like, where is everyone? Like,
yeah,
all my friends had kind of fallen off like, not all my friends, but like, a lot of them have gone separate ways and things like that. So, it's been a little bit of a different experience for me, because I'm super comfortable with myself and hanging with myself and like
yeah,
going out for walks by myself and like going to restaurants by myself and stuff. And I know though that that's difficult for people who are in their 20s and single, possibly single, for instance, and
sure.
being by yourself is hard because that's a time in your life when you're with other people. You want to be with other people. You want to hang with other people and like go
Mhm.
out and experience life. So I've got my kids too. My kids are really supportive. And so it's like, we've become closer as a family unit, definitely, like because I'm more present
That's
and
beautiful.
yeah.
I love that. I love that. So, do you have any advice that you can leave with us for any listeners that are maybe just starting out on their sobriety journey or are sober curious?
So yeah, I think my biggest advice is read the book, read This Naked Mind, and just take the first step. So you're never going to regret it. I'll tell you that. You will
Mm.
never, there'll be moments of FOMO for sure, but like you're never going to regret saying like I'm not drinking tonight. Like you'll feel good in the morning, like you'll be feel more present in the situation. But yeah, so read the book This Naked Mind. You don't have to give up drinking for the rest of your life like today. Read the book and you will learn a lot about alcohol, which will help arm you with that information because we haven't, as a society, we don't talk about that. Like as a woman, I know explicitly down to the molecular level, like what fat does in our systems, right? There's
Yeah.
books written on like how fat metabolizes and this and that and the other thing. We all know how calories burn and that this calorie is
Yeah.
better than calorie. And like this, we know so much, especially as women, about food, nutrition, diet culture, how our bodies work on food and stuff like that. And I nobody people are shocked when I tell them that alcohol is ethanol. It's the same thing
Mhm.
you fuel your car with it.
A carcinogen, cancer causing, proven.
But we don't talk about what it does to your body, right? Like why is it a carcinogen? What does it do? Like
Mm.
that's very scientific, but like, we understand how smoking causes lung cancer,
Yeah.
right? And so we're just slowly as a society starting to make those connections as well. Like healthcare practitioners are coming out with more and more solid studies that are not paid for by big alcohol. So a lot of studies out there. This is back to your question, what advice? Looking critically. So a lot of studies, you'll see a lot of magazine articles. um, one glass of red wine a day is good for your heart. Those studies were all funded by big alcohol. They're like, those are not unbiased scholarly studies, or they were
Yeah.
done in the 1980s
Yeah.
and they were funded by big alcohol in the 1980s, and people are still quoting the scientific research from the 1980s, dated research. And journalists, it kills me, journalists who fact check everything don't bother fact checking if this is real or not. But
Yeah.
anyway, um so I think that's my advice is like look critically at, think and find the information. And you don't have to quit tomorrow, but like yeah, definitely like take that first step and read the book, read This Naked Mind, get some non-alcoholic drinks in your hand.
Yes, yes. I will put a link to the book in the show notes for sure, and a link to your website. But what's the best way for people to connect with you, to follow along with what you're doing?
Yeah, so somegoodcleanfun.com is the publication, and if you sign up for our Friday newsletter, we send out a newsletter every Friday. In that newsletter, we usually send out our weekly or sorry, we do a bi-weekly wine review, a non-alcoholic wine review, and then a bi-weekly every other week we try and do some sort of like cocktail or something else that's not wine, and so we kind of balance that out. And so subscribe to the newsletter, and I often send out promo codes for online buying drinks online and stuff like that, and subscriber specials. And so if you sign up for the newsletter, you can get access to that. And then on Instagram, you can find me at Some Good Clean Fun or at Rethinking Drinking, which is the publication's Instagram account. We do a lot of the recipes and things over there. And then on TikTok, you can find me at Mom Rethinking Drinking on
Mom
TikTok. So
rethinking drinking. Okay, perfect.
yeah, yeah.
I personally will be subscribing to the newsletter as soon as we get off our call. Awesome. Thank you so much. It was so great talking to you. Like, I feel like you have so much great information to share. It was a true pleasure.
Yeah, it was so awesome chatting with you. And thank you so much for this opportunity to share and chat. And hopefully people that are listening, will be inspired to take that next step.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Have a good day.
This is Keisha signing off on another episode of Done with Debauchery. If you liked what you heard, please share and subscribe. You can also find me at donewithdebauchery.com or follow along on Instagram at donewithdebauchery. Thanks for listening.